So Chelsea through to the last four of the FIFA Club World Cup, beating Palmeiras 2-1 in Philly. Lots of drama, lots of hype, lots of fire and kind of confrontation as we expected, but Chelsea got the job done. I think the biggest thing about this game for me, kind of reflecting on it, thinking about it a bit more before making this review, it kind of felt like a signal of the future of Chelsea. The future of Chelsea under Enzo Maresca. And I think that's the most exciting thing. I think it was a signal of what is to come in several aspects. Firstly, in terms of the players that started, the way the players performed, the way some players came off the bench and made an impression with not a lot of minutes. That's impressive. Also, of course, for obvious reasons, one of the opposing players who is about to join Chelsea. And that's kind of what I wanted this tournament to be. Obviously, we're really happy of how far Chelsea have got. I think the last two performances have been really, really good, or at least there have been segments of it that have been really, really impressive. And I think shows us a lot of substance to I think what's going to come for Chelsea in the upcoming season. But also just a preview, a glimpse into what season 2 is going to look like. You know, we know what the first season under Enzo Maresca was. I think it has been completed. We wanted a hint of what's to come, and unfortunately at times in this tournament, especially in the group stage, we didn't see that. As we've reached the knockouts, I think there's been a lot more excitement, a lot more positivity, and now Chelsea one game away from reaching yet another Club World Cup final, of course the first in this expanded format. I'm Daniel Charles. It's going to be my review, my breakdown. Thank you once again for your major support in recent weeks on not only the Club World Cup content, but also on my transfer content. Go and check that out on the podcast feed and YouTube if you haven't already. The big thing about this game in terms of the lineup, my preview, and who would start, who wouldn't, the concerns over Pedro Neto, and some of the injury and suspension problems that Chelsea had walking into this game. Now, of course, there was a very, very late change, and that was because Reece James initially was in the starting lineup. He was going to play a central midfield role with Malo Gusto playing at right back. Not a fan of that, but of course Reece James had to be taken out of the starting lineup very late on. Maresca saying that Reece felt something during the warm-up. We prefer not to take any risks with him, which is understandable. And then Maresca has to make a decision. Does he bring in, say, Josh Achimpong, move Malo Gusto to central midfield? Does he bring in Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall? Does he bring in Dario Sugo? Or does he bring in Andrey Santos? In some ways, before this game, starting Andrey Santos would have been the most unlikely of those options. But I've got to give credit to Maresca, and I think it is one of these things that signals, I think, potentially a change for Andrey Santos and also for Enzo Maresca, that out of all the options, he goes with Andrey Santos. I think that is a huge vote of confidence in a game of this significance for Chelsea. I really do. And the performance of Andrey Santos was very positive. The rest of the team, so you have Sanchez in goal, Gusto, Trevor Chalobah, Levi Colwell, Cucurella, Fernandes, arguably partnering Santos, but I really don't think that's how it was set up. And then we have Pedro Neto, Palmer, Nkunku, Delap. Obviously, got to say, so much credit, so much support for Pedro Neto. You know, no one would have said anything bad if and I think understandably, you know, I think a lot of us predicted, I thought it was more likely maybe he wouldn't start this game, but to have the courage, the conviction to go out there, I thought the tribute pre-game was wonderful with the names of Diogo and Andre on the Chelsea shirt, and you've got to give credit to Neto because it was a brilliant performance as well. I thought there were some wonderful moments from Neto in that first half that should have been capitalised on down that right side. I think it just shows the level of, you know, conviction to go out there and play in what surely is so difficult circumstances. But obviously him starting and how Chelsea were going to look going into this game was obviously a big topic of conversation based on how they set up against Benfica. I love the rotations in this first half. The way I'd describe it would be sort of like controlled chaos, in the sense that, all right, I think most of the time you obviously had Neto on the right. You had Palmer and Fernandes kind of playing inside kind of number 10s in roles that we've seen him play pretty consistently for Enzo Maresca. But Nkunku still had a bit of freedom. And I think Nkunku starting again is bizarre. It's weird. I'm not saying in a bad way. I thought there were some nice moments from Nkunku. He should have absolutely hit the target with the effort before half time. And again, a question mark over what's going on with his future. But that's a separate conversation. But what I liked about it was how clearly Chelsea were not very predictable in the way they were set up, especially from an attacking point of view, and that caused Palmeiras a lot of issues. And I think credit to Maresca, the tactical setup and the performances of the players. I mean, the rotations, specifically from Cole Palmer, were just devastating. And I think, it is kind of a Cole Palmer trademark, right? He goes where he wants to. He has this free role and he can devastate on the pitch. And I think it was one of those things that Palmeiras in that first half really, really struggled with. Kind of this man v man system they were set up with just didn't work at all, it's kind of a problem with man v man at times. I've had frustrations when Chelsea tried to execute it. It's not that it can never work, but I think part of the problem sometimes is it really does then rely on individual players to be at their best, to be at their peak, because if one of those players loses out an individual battle, major gaps open up. And I think that's what you saw in the opening goal. A really lovely constructed opening goal, Trevor Chalobah passing the ball into the feet of Palmer, and it's just kind of that classic Palmer position, that place that space he occupies between the midfield of the opposing team and the defence, and he turns. There's a nice decoy run from Liam Delap which takes I think it's Fuchs away and then opens up more space for Palmer. This goal, the way he rolls it from his left foot into the bottom corner past Weatherton, it reminded me a bit of the Fulham goal at home last season. Some of those finishes that just cool, calm, collected, as you expect from Palmer. And it kind of felt like from very early on, Palmer was going to take control of this game. And again, he kind of does have those Hazard vibes where you can kind of tell the level of Cole Palmer performance you're going to get quite early on. And this seemed to be a brilliant one. And all round, I thought Trev's involvement in the first goal was brilliant. I thought Trev had a really good performance. And also just the interchange. And I thought Andrey Santos in particular, some of the passes he was playing, because he was the deepest midfielder. He had a very simplified role, not in a negative way. He was disciplined in this game. He had to be disciplined in this game because Chelsea didn't have the benefit and the legs and anticipation of Moises Caicedo. They didn't have Romeo Lavia who could play that role. So what you really had with Santos was he had to be disciplined. He had to shield that defence. He had to stay a little bit deeper where maybe his instincts, as we know, are to go much more adventurous, get in the final third, make things happen, score goals. That is a credit to Andrey Santos. Again, you have to factor in his first start for Chelsea, but also a start, as I mentioned in my preview, why I wanted him to start this game was understanding you're coming up against a major Brazilian side, and I think he adapted to the game wonderfully. And some of those interchanges that started with Santos quite deep, moving to Fernandes, sometimes linking up with Nkunku, Fernandes getting the ball back, taking a shot. I just loved it. And there were moments again where, a bit like in that Benfica game, you can see if it's a little bit more crisp, if a cross is a little bit better. There was a Neto cross that absolutely should have been capitalised on by Liam Delap. I think he should have done a lot better getting to that ball. Or sometimes when, again, a cross, a pass is just a little bit off. You see, there were moments in that first half where Chelsea were moving so fluidly. They looked like a team in full sync, in full motion. And I thought that was a wonderful sight. I think Fernandes has gone up to another level during this Club World Cup. And great to see Palmer as well, who hasn't really got going in this tournament, have his best performance so far. And hopefully that continues into the semi-final. And I just thought that controlled chaos was wonderful. I also found it pretty comical, not in a bad way, but like just chuckling along to myself watching this game. The treatment on Estevao Willian. He had a scuffle with Levi Colwill, sort of left in a boot on Levi early, and then Cucurella got to him. And it felt like Chelsea players were then just kind of giving receipts to Estevao Willian. It almost felt like kind of an initiation, a little bit like when Diego came up against JT in 2014, or just maybe an introduction to the level of physicality that Estevao Willian is going to have to face in the Premier League. But I thought the way he got round it, that's the weird thing about Estevao in this game. You didn't want him to do well, but it's nice in retrospect, looking back at his nice moments of going, well, there's a nice sort of introduction to the player. Because I think many Chelsea fans, this is probably the first time, unless you've been watching Palmeiras games or you've been watching some of their Club World Cup games, it's probably the first time many Chelsea fans have been introduced to Estevao Willian in a serious way and have actually had a clear look at him. And I thought sometimes there was a moment in the first half where he had Cucurella hunting him down. And he was sort of running the ball from right across the field to the left and able to ride all those challenges. And obviously we saw what he did in the second half. The one negative of that first half was Liam Delap getting himself booked, which means he's banned for the next game. That's a conversation for later, but I thought it was a little bit petulant. I like the aggression, I like the physicality, I like the confrontation. I think you need it against teams like Palmeiras because they want to go into those dirty antics as well. You've got to have players who are going to rise to that level and not go under it and not be fooled by it. But I thought it was really disappointing yellow at the end of a mostly positive first half where Chelsea had controlled the game, seemed to be in a nice rhythm in attack wise. But Palmeiras adapted. You've got to give them credit. They moved away from that system. They weren't operating as deep. They were much more brave in terms of pressing Chelsea from the front, penned them back in the opening 10 minutes of that first half. And although there were, dangerous, set pieces that went in, really, the equaliser comes from an insane goal. And that's the thing that, of course, equally excites all of us about Estevao, Willian, the talent that's there, this kind of maverick player, this, I'm not going to use the G word to describe him, but someone who, really in a lot of senses could absolutely light up the Premier League next season at a ridiculously young age. And just a moment of pure genius. I think that's what it is. I have already seen over-analysing of Robert Sanchez in the involvement of this goal and him having some blame here. Now, I'm not resistant to blaming or criticising Rob Sanchez, but on this one, it to me just looks like an insane goal, because 99% of players are not even attempting what Estevao does there at that angle. If they're attempting it, they're probably getting it wrong. It's probably going over the bar, it's probably hitting the side netting, it's probably doing nothing. Most players there, with the angle, with the lack of options, are probably cutting back and looking to pass to a teammate. The fact that he even tries that is just ridiculous, the cheek of it, but to be able to execute it in that way, sometimes you just have to sit there and go, insane player. And of course, in hindsight, in retrospect, you look back at it and go, well, that's just wonderful, and it's kind of a bonus for Chelsea to see that talent there and to see what he could produce, because on a big stage he pulls his team back into a game that maybe was drifting away from them. And then, obviously insane talent and what he could become at Chelsea. And obviously that will be something we will discuss and we'll realise and see in the upcoming months at Chelsea. But then you kind of get from controlled chaos in the first half to concerning chaos. And this is what I'm saying, like the Flamengo vibes were very much there of, is this game going to now drag away from Chelsea? And it was kind of end to end, what you expect at this stage of the tournament, very much tournament football, them looking to hit us on transition, Chelsea looking to regain some control. Maresca, though, I've got to give him credit, he instantly responds here. He does not wait around. And I think that's a credit, because at times, sometimes you can maybe criticise Maresca for not, acting quickly enough, maybe when there are fluctuations in games, especially momentum wise. He acted instantly here. Madueke comes on the left wing and Joao Pedro also comes on for his debut. That is in many ways, I think, a massive sign. I think it's a massive sign of positivity for Joao Pedro. He plays a centre forward role. He doesn't play kind of an inside forward role. I wonder what it says about Nicholas Jackson, because Nicholas Jackson is, of course, really the first choice Chelsea striker, and he was available in this game. And the fact that he doesn't come off the bench at all is a sign. Am I reading too much into it? I mean, Christopher Nkunku's played a lot of football in this tournament. Are we going to reach, pre-season after this, and or Jackson starts the next game? Maybe, I'm not entirely sure. But I did think it was maybe a damning indictment, if you want to be harsh, to Jackson, or a ringing endorsement of Joao Pedro. And I think it was the right call, because I think Joao Pedro massively impressed in his debut for Chelsea. There's no two ways about it. I thought, like Delap, he offers a focal point. He offers a physicality where at times Sanchez was just booting the ball to him, and at times he was able to wrestle out of challenges, win the ball, chest it down, bring others into play. That's a positive. So you have that focal point that you can play to relieve some pressure in kind of chaotic moments like this. But also, I just thought his all-round game, how, it's one of those things me and Ryan Adset were talking about earlier in the week on our podcast, was his hybrid ability, where he isn't just kind of a focal point, he isn't a battering ram, he is someone who very much wants to take the ball, get it, has the flair to move out to the left, to move out to the right, to take players on, to dribble. There were a few times where maybe his touch was a little heavy and that could have led to more. But the way he linked up, and I think many people have already made this assessment, and I think it's a fair one given it's such a small cameo in an intensified situation. He looked very comfortable in a Chelsea shirt. He did not look like someone who's barely had any training sessions working with the first team. And that is something you really want to cultivate and grow. I really don't want it to be a situation. We've seen it sometimes with players. I mean, the Mudryk one comes to mind, where he has an amazing debut, a cameo, but then really from there really struggles to adapt. But Joao Pedro, another, South American Brazilian player coming up against a Brazilian team. And, very much impressing in that aspect too. Is it another part of it that, made him a suitable player for this environment, kind of a confrontational player in this environment, because he's got that fiery side to him, which we know, which I think helped. But I just thought him and Madueke on the left just added an extra spice to Chelsea's attack when really they were struggling to regain control. It meant that Chelsea suddenly were making Palmeiras think a lot more, that they couldn't maybe commit as many men forward as they wanted to when maybe they felt the initiative was there to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. They really didn't have that. And then Chelsea were finding space, particularly on the left side. Again, Fernandes receiving the ball, turning well, looking forward, and getting Chelsea further up the pitch. The shame of it, it's not the shame of it. Listen, Chelsea scored a goal and we won the game. But really, those moments, because Joao Pedro had a shot late on that was well saved. Also another shot from Madueke that was well saved. The winning goal itself is an absolute mess, really. I mean, but listen, who cares? Short corner, Malo Gusto receives it, clearly trying to play a low cross into the box. I think it gets deflected twice, and eventually Weatherton, I mean, it's a disaster from a goalkeeping point of view. And this is the contrast, right? You criticising Rob Sanchez is just ridiculous in comparison for this goal. This is a goalkeeping error. The speed of the ball as well makes it even more devastating for the keeper, but thank God he wasn't in his best moment, so it trickles past him and Chelsea go 2-1 up. Just on Malo Gusto, I've seen some analysis. Listen, I think rightly so many people have been critical of Malo Gusto. I don't think he should be a starting player for Chelsea when everyone's fit. Absolutely. I actually don't think this was the worst Malo Gusto performance. I thought in the first half there were some nice overlapping moments when he got close to the box. I don't think there were any moments. There was a few moments actually where he tracked back pretty well. That's been a problem of Malo Gusto. I'm not calling this an incredible performance by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not hailing this performance as some great thing, right? If Reece James is fit, he comes back into the first team. I'd even still have Josh Achimpong, yes, over him as a starting player. But I don't think it was a disaster. And for someone who's been under a lot of scrutiny, had to be taken off at half time in the Conference League final, it's nice for Malo Gusto at least, even though the goal of course is not given to him. A positive moment that's huge for Chelsea in the context of this game and this tournament. Madueke and Pedro chances late on, but Chelsea, as I think they've done kind of another trademark under Maresca, Chelsea are very good at seeing out games now under Enzo Maresca. It's kind of something that they were terrible at under Pochettino, under Graham Potter. It's something they've really grown to be very shrewd at. When they get in front, especially late on in the game, they're able to shut it down. And in added time, there was no fear at all of Sanchez being affected. And really in this game, Chelsea limited Palmeiras to very, very little. And, how many times, I know we're playing some great teams probably beyond this stage, but how many times are you going to have an Estevao, who's now joining Chelsea, provide a goal like that? I even think if Estevao tries that another 10 times, he probably isn't scoring the majority of the times. So I think defensively, Chelsea have been, since the group stage, very, against Benfica in this game, very, very good defensively, limiting teams and stopping their biggest threats as best as they could. And I think that's a really positive sign structurally. And also, again, a second half that threatened to go in a very chaotic, kind of concerning fashion. Chelsea wrestling back control, the subs from Maresca making a positive impact, and Chelsea being able to see out the game in a mature way. I think that's a positive sign of the maturity and the growth of this team in pressurised situations over the past few months, really. Like, I think there was a period in the season, last season, when we weren't really doing that well, but I think in the closing run of last season into the Club World Cup, we absolutely have shown that, and that's a positive sign. The negative is we come out of this game with some wounds, and those wounds are not only Liam Delap banned, but I think more devastating is Levi Colwill. Levi Colwill made an incredible block whilst the game was still 1-1, a clearance from a cross into the box that would have almost certainly, I think, would have been a goal for Palmeiras. And Levi has been the standout defender for Chelsea in this tournament. He's been incredible in the running. Again, another sign of Chelsea's growth and development, of Levi Colwill's growth and development as a dominant centre-back for Chelsea. And I think not having him is a massive blow. I'm not saying that I don't have some confidence or belief that, Tosin Adarabioyo can come back into the defence alongside Trev and put in a good performance, but Levi has become a kind of non-negotiable starter for Chelsea. So hopefully we can get to the final, then Levi can come back in. But that's a massive blow, because I think the growth in development of kind of the character and the leadership and guidance, I think that Levi has brought to this defence, very much growing into that centre-back we all felt he could become earlier in his career when he was on loan at Huddersfield, when he was on loan at Brighton. So that's a shame. That's a shame in itself, because I think he is a huge player at the moment for Enzo Maresca. I think the positive is that obviously Caicedo is going to be back for the game. That's huge in central midfield. We will see about Lavia and we'll see about Reece James. The thing is about this kind of gap between today, last night and Fluminense on Tuesday night is that, it's not a massive, or at least I know it's UK time. So actually the gap between games is not that big as compared to the round of 16 and the quarterfinals. So that in itself is going to be of intrigue. If Reece has felt something, are they going to risk him in only a couple of days? I think that's a big question, huge question for Enzo Maresca. I do think Andrey Santos, though, huge plaudits. We've spoken a lot about Andrey Santos in this tournament. I've been frustrated that he didn't play that much in the group stages. I think he probably should have played more. And then heading into this game, because Caicedo wasn't there, we knew Lavia wasn't going to be there. Huge question marks over, is Asuga going to play there? Is he going to play Dewsbury Hall there? Is he going to start Reece there, which was the intention? And I kind of wonder if Maresca was kind of saved from himself in this scenario, because I kind of wouldn't have liked to see the scenario. I mean, maybe it could have worked out, but, Reece in central midfield and Malo Gusto at right back, I don't like that starting lineup. I just don't. I don't think it works. I think we've been exposed enough, and I kind of wonder if this is a turning point by coincidence, by some fortune, bad fortune for Reece, but in the case of Santos, great fortune of being able to start this game and then take his opportunity. People have pointed out that, yeah, sure, we know his attacking influence, but Andrey Santos, for me, proving how mature and ready he is to start games for Chelsea at a high level. This is not his kind of preferred role. This is not an attacking 8 role. He is asked to come in and effectively play a holding role that Lavia could play. And he plays it adeptly. He plays it with such maturity and such discipline. We've had conversations about Andrey Santos, and it's not about saying that Andrey Santos, it's just the absurdity of social media that people go to these extreme, strawman lengths to try and dismiss any kind of conversation about tactics and about personnel, right? It's just complete nonsense, right? No one has ever argued that Andrey Santos should be playing above everyone else, above all our best players all of the time. It's about, if you're rotating the team, if you're bringing in players and maybe giving a rest to some players, he probably should be playing over, Reece playing in their central midfield, and also because of the new midfield options you have. And it's also about, just looking at what Andrey Santos, like other new players, can contribute and elevate to our team. And I think what we saw, and maybe has revealed to Enzo Maresca, is you've got a new tool in Andrey Santos, not just offensively, but also defensively, that can be deployed and work really well. That is something that I hope for Santos is a major turning point, and I also think for Enzo Maresca, kind of more broadly, is maybe a turning point. Maybe it's a lesson of we don't need to do this square pegging round hole thing anymore. We really don't, because you've got midfield options. You've got good midfield options now in Dario Asugo as well. You've got Andrey Santos. You've got players who can play that role and add some depth to your midfield, which you didn't have for most of last season. So I think that's positive. And also, obviously, Cole Palmer, lovely to see him embrace, Estevao post-game. I mean, his post-match comments and his interview basically saying that Estevao had no idea what he was saying to him were just comical, as well as him and Tosin. I found it hilarious. Just, him and Tosin seem to be a double act now. It's a pair. When you interview Cole Palmer, you seem to get Tosin, which I have no problems with, because I just think it makes it more charming, to be honest. Kind of the great entertaining duo of Tosin and Palmer, which we're seeing for a lot of interviews at the moment, and that narrative going on. I do like that stuff. But in terms of Chelsea, there is obviously an emotional reunion coming, and that is with, of course, the great Thiago Silva. Another Brazilian side. It's kind of, I wonder if it's going to be kind of a Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair WrestleMania 24 moment on Tuesday, where we're going to have, because of course for Chelsea to win this tournament, they're going to have to get past Thiago Silva, who of course we all love very dearly, and of course it's been an emotional story for him even to get to this tournament. It's been great seeing Thiago, and I think it is right for the tournament. Just a separate non-Chelsea point, I think it's great for the tournament that a South American Brazilian side have got to the semi-finals, because I think they have kind of made this tournament and added a dimension to this tournament I don't think many people suspected, if you were more cynical about it before. But obviously it's going to be another tight game. I think it will be, we know what to expect in these games, and Chelsea have had enough experience just in this tournament of what to expect. They're cagey, they're tight, they're confrontational, they're fiery. But I think it's a positive sign that Chelsea, unlike with Flamengo, were able maybe to learn the lessons of that first game, react, adapt, and very much thrive in this occasion. And I also just think the inclusion of Joao Pedro, I think, is very exciting. I did not expect, I was excited to see Joao Pedro. I've been positive about his signing, and I think it could work for Chelsea. I think that cameo, listen, we can't go overboard and say this is the level of performance we're going to get 9 times out of 10. Maybe we won't. But I think it's so exciting to see a player come off the bench in that environment and take a hold of that situation and almost score a goal and look so comfortable in those surroundings. And maybe will play a different role than even we anticipated. But you do have the freedom with Joao Pedro, a bit like Andrey Santos, of using him in different roles. And that's surely a good thing when you're coming into a season when I think rotation has to be on point, because Chelsea are going deep in this tournament. There's going to be a very short pre-season right into the intensity of the Premier League. So you need a big squad. You need a lot of options. I hope I've covered everything in the game there. If I haven't and there are things you want to talk about, please do let me know in the comments below. We will obviously be back to preview the massive semi-final. It's going to be interesting to see, Dortmund, Real Madrid, Bayern, PSG, to see who makes it to the other semi-final. Chelsea in some ways have lucked out being on this side of the draw, but you do anticipate, unless Dortmund do a madness, Chelsea are going to have to face someone huge if they do get to that final, but obviously have to get past the brilliant Fluminense and Thiago Silva yet. But another really positive night, I think, for Enzo Maresca. I think it's a sign of his team maturing. It's a sign of them gaining credibility under pressure as well, and showing an ability to get over the line when they are under a lot of scrutiny, because that is something that has been leveled at them before. And I think over recent months, we've seen a positive turn in that. And I hope that this is a sign only of that positive momentum growing and gaining and sort of developing within this group, that they can get over the line even if there are troubles within games. And I think that's a great sign for a developing young team. So those are my thoughts. Follow, share, comment, all that good stuff. Interact in the comments below. And I will see you again very, very soon. All the best.